Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third session of holiday baking from my home to yours. Today, we are making mince pies. Now, there are 3 different options for mince pies. There is the traditional mince pie, which is a minced fruit pie, which would be the original. There is the British mince pie, which is more of a meat pie, and there's tourtière, which is the French-Canadian pie. Ours is kind of a hybrid of both the minced meat pie, which is the British one, and the tourtière. So the first step, we're going to do the crust. So in the crust, you are going to want, we're using Crisco, the shortening of some kind, or I think you can use butter if you have that instead. And we are just going to pop the whole thing, so it's the whole thing into the bowl. Just get all the stuff off that you can. There's no point leaving it on the container. Okay, and then once you've added that to your bowl, you are going to start by adding 5 cups of all-purpose flour. So you will probably need more by the end, but we're going to just start with 5. So let's start. And you want them to be flat cups, so not overflowing, but not too little either. So 1, 2, 3, 'almost there, 4, and we've got 5 in the bowl. So you're not just going to stir this. For this, you want a knife, or if you have a pastry cutter, you can use that too. And you're just going to chop up the shortening. So you want to just chop, chop, chop until it's in very small pieces. So to this bowl, you're also going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. And then you have all the dry ingredients ready to go. So I have my mom here with me tonight because she is going to help me, because this part has 2 pieces. We have to make the crust and we have to make the filling. So we're going to start with the crust. We'll pass it on to her, and then we are going to make the filling. So there are many versions of this pie, and you can make them into a pie or you can make them into a tart. We are going to do tarts just because that way we can freeze some of them so we don't need them all at once. But the other difference that's going to be probably different from mine to yours is I'm going to be using ground chicken. And this is just a preference for us because neither my fiance or I really eat pork or beef. It just doesn't work so well for us. So I'm going to use ground chicken. You could use ground turkey. You could use ground beef. You could use a combination of ground pork and beef. It's totally up to you. If you're vegetarian, you could use the, what is it called? Plant-based meat. So the crumble. We've used that a couple times, but we just prefer a regular meat pie. So we're going to chop that. The pieces need to be quite small. I don't often have the patience for this. My mom is far better at that, but she has more years of experience. So we're going to chop it up. So it's going to start looking just kind of little chunky. It's not going to come together in a ball until you add your wet ingredients. So with the wet ingredients, when it is time for that, we are going to use cold water. So we're going to use water from the fridge, but any kind of cold water is good. Just we find the colder the better. So ice water is great. Now, my family traditionally wouldn't eat this at Christmas Eve. In our household, we would have tourtière, which is not my most favorite food, but it does seem to be everyone else's. So because I have my mom here with me, I'm gonna bring her over, and while I'm chopping, I'm gonna let her share a little bit about the tortilla because it's something that she brought to our family. So I'm gonna bring her on over.
I can actually chop like tortilla and get the heck of it. Okay, so I'm the mother with the tortilla, and there's a funny backstory to the tortilla. So what was happening in our family was that when the kids were younger, we have 5 and now adult children, we didn't actually have a traditional Christmas Eve dinner that had come from either my husband's tradition or mine. And it just seemed like we ended up eating leftovers on Christmas Eve so often so that we'd have room in the fridge for when we had the turkey leftovers. And that seemed like it didn't make it a special kind of time. So I found this wonderful recipe for tortilla. And I have some Acadian roots on my mom's side, and Mariah and her brothers and sisters have some Franco-Ontarian roots on their dad's side. So I thought, oh, that's going to be perfect. That'll be just the thing to make. And I made it. I found the recipe really was wonderful and had all the spices and the bay leaf and everything else in it. And I served it for dinner and to my fairly young family at the time. And it was not a hit. And I thought, oh, well, that was that. It was a good try. It was good food, but I won't do that again. And then come the following Christmas Eve, one of my oldest sons, Tomas, said to me, so Mama, I guess we're having tortilla tonight, aren't we? And I said, oh, I didn't know that we'd be having tortilla. And he said, you know, we always have tortilla on Christmas Eve. It's our favorite. And so I went out to the grocery store and I got what I needed, which was mainly the ground pork and beef, because I had flour and all the other things at home. And I made the tortilla, and it has become a family favorite with both my own children and also with their partners, although as Mariah indicated, she is not the #1 fan, but I'm sure there must be something I make that she really likes. So this recipe for pastry that Mariah and I are making tonight actually it's an old recipe. It would probably come from the 50s. And I got it from my Auntie Greta, who I was very, very fond of. She's no longer with us. And so we call it in our family Auntie Greta's pie pastry. And it will make two full double-sided pies with a little bit left over. Or it will make, I've made probably 34 tarts with partial toppings as well. It also keeps in the fridge in a sealed bag, like a Ziploc bag, very nicely, and you can use it for up to a week as long as it's been refrigerated. And it rolls out like a charm. You won't find a difference with that. So there you have it. So tonight we'll only be using part of this, but we'll put the rest of it to good use. So I'm handing it back to Mariah here now.
Very good. Okay, so now that you have the story of tortilla, I am just not a big pastry person. It also doesn't help that I can't have wheat. So, and neither can my mom. So really it's
A labor of love.
Yes, it's for the people who actually enjoy it. So this year we can't see 2 of my siblings. They both live in Toronto, and that's definitely a no-no right now. But both my brother and my sister's partner love tortilla. So part of their Christmas gift this year is we will be dropping that off on their doorstep, and they will get to eat that just like we would have it here. My fiance is very excited that he will have these coming home tonight, and he is very excited that he will get to eat tortilla next week because he does love that also. So once your pie filling is all good, so once it's chopped up into really small pieces, you'll know it's ready. It's in tiny, tiny little balls, but it's not congealed together. And I'll show you. Just looks like a little dry cookie dough, really. Dry cookie dough would be a good example. So the next step, you need the wet ingredients. So you just need a 1-cup measure. We prefer the glass ones because you can see what's going on. And to that, you're going to add 1 egg. Oh yes, my mother was correcting me. First, you're going to add the brown sugar. So you need 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. And you need 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar.
In a pinch, you could use white, but we always do that.
Yeah, so my mom would say you could use white vinegar if you don't have apple cider. We just prefer to use apple cider vinegar if we have it on hand. Then you're going to add an egg to this little concoction once you kind of mix that around to make sure the brown sugar melts together. So, like that. 1 egg. Oh, I'm making a mess of this egg tonight. And before you do anything, make sure you take your eggshells out of the eggs if you've managed to crack them all into the cup, because nobody's going to want to eat that. Okay. And then to that cup, you are just going to fill it the rest of the way to the 1 cup line with cold water. So it can be ice water or just cold tap water, whatever one you have. All right, and I'm going to fill it with cold water from our fridge. And just to the 1 cup line. And then you're going to grab a fork and just mix that all together. And I'll show you what it looks like. So this is what it's going to look like. Not very appetizing, but I promise it makes it delicious. And you're just going to add that to the bowl. And you're going to mix it all together. Yeah, I'm using a fork. If it is too wet, you can add more flour. But it should be pretty good. And once it gets too tough with the fork, you can move to your hands. All right. If you have a helper in the kitchen, you can have them, because we're going to make a filling, you can put this into a Ziploc bag and chill it until the filling is done. Or you could have your helper grab you some of the ingredients that we're going to need for the next step. So you will need carrots, you will need onion, Worcestershire sauce, you are going to need beef stock, you're going to need a little bit of flour. Let's see what else. Oh, the ground meat is always helpful. Okay, so mine is coming together, but I think I'm going to have to start using my hands. Rule for pastry, the less handling the possible. So only combine it until it's just combined. You don't want to be kneading it. It's not like dough. So only knead it until it is formed into a ball, which apparently I need to grow a couple feet because I'm on my tiptoes right now. Okay. All right, once that is into a ball, you can set that aside because we are done with it for a little while. I'm going to pass this to my mom because she probably can form it better for me. There's still some dryness in there. I'm just going to quick wash my hands and then I'll be back. Okay, welcome back. All right, so typically, again, I'm doing things a little bit different than we would traditionally do. I am going to use a skillet, just like I used last week for potato latkes. We would normally do this on the stove and usually in a pretty big saucepan, just because it has the right amount of space. But for our purposes, because I don't want to be carrying my laptop to a stove, I'm going to do it at the counter with a skillet. So what you're first going to want to do is you're going to want to turn on your pan and you're going to want to brown your meat. Once you've done that, you'll be able to add the vegetables to it. But what we also need is onion and carrots. So we're going to use 1 yellow onion and 1 carrot. And you're going to want to cut it, dice it into small pieces. So I've done pretty small pieces. These break into 3. And that's what we're going to do. So you can just take your onion and we're going to chop it up. And then we're going to put it all into our skillet. For this one, if there are other vegetables you prefer, you could use those. I'm sure you could add some garlic and that would taste good. I'm sure if you wanted to add potatoes, that would be more traditionally in a tortilla. You could add potatoes. If you wanted to do sweet potatoes, I'm sure sweet potatoes would be quite good also. If you do end up making a gluten-free pie crust, or you purchase a gluten-free pie crust from the store and you're just looking for a filling, an alternative to using flour to thicken is that you can use potato. You can grate a potato and you can just use that to thicken it. So I'm going to put in my ground chicken and I'm going to start browning that. There we go. So I've added those ingredients onto the screen. So for anyone who's looking for those, you can find them there. All right, so the chicken is in there and we're going to turn that up. You're gonna wanna cook this on about medium heat. So about 4 is a good temperature to be doing this at, and you're gonna wanna put a little bit of oil in the bottom of your pan, and then you can go from there. All right. So we're gonna brown our meat, and we are going to add our onions, and we are going to add our carrots. So for the carrots, we need to peel those. And again, with the carrots, you're gonna wanna dice them pretty small. So you don't want big, giant circles. You're gonna want them in smaller bits. All right. The nice thing about doing the streams is that you can look back on it later. You don't have to follow along right now, as it may not be, you may not quite be able to. So while I am doing this, my mom is over there rolling it out, and she is going to roll it into tarts for us, just because that is going to be what's easier in our household right now. And I'm going to add my onions in with my meat. There we go. And good to go. All right. So I will lower this a little bit so you can see what's going on my counter. So the other items that are going to go into this are tomato paste, Worcestershire sauce, and we're going to add some stock to it. So because I'm doing chicken, I am going to do chicken stock, just because I don't think you really want to mix the beef stock in with that, but you could. There we go. That is cooking up good. You just want to keep an eye on that so it doesn't dry out and burn. So I'm just going to chop up my carrot. So I'm just going to cut it into circles, and then I'm going to cube those. All right, we're just going to cook that all together. All right. When we have this on Christmas Eve, because I don't eat wheat, my mom usually just leaves me the filling, and then I'll eat that, and then I'll douse it in gravy. I think the gravy might be what draws people to it, because it's hard to not love gravy. All right, we're going to cook that together. There we go. All right. So for the pie, you would typically cover the top of it. So you would do the pie crust, put the filling in, and then you would add a cover to it. So because we're doing tarts, we are also going to add a cover to them. We're just going to do a slightly smaller circle than what we have for the bottom. But if you wanted, you could do a shape of some kind. So if you had a cookie cutter that was smaller, you could do that alternatively. And on a pie, if you're choosing to do a pie, make sure you cover it and pinch the edges, but you're going to want to pierce a hole of some kind so that you can release the steam. All right, we're gonna keep that going. All right, you just want to cook it down till the carrots are soft and the onions are cooked and the meat is completely browned. There we go. It's times like these where you wish you had a nice little food processor to just chop some of these up. Okay. There we go. All right, that's sizzling now. So, let's see. The original pie was made with dry fruits, and it kind of had a similar style to what you put in like a fruit cake. Now, to me, that doesn't sound like something I'd want to eat for dinner, but obviously it was very popular because it was eaten for hundreds of years. I think this might be the more preferred version. We've done some cool stack challenges throughout the last couple weeks, finding out what are some of the other staff at WCL's favorite baked goods during the holiday. And many of my coworkers mentioned tortilla on there. So I think we may not be the only family to have a meat pie of some kind on Christmas Eve. I think there are quite a few Kitchener-Waterloo families who do similar things. So it's just nice to learn about other people's traditions. All right, I'm almost there with the carrots. A lot of cutting. So I am using a bouillon cube for our stock. If you're doing that, you're going to want to make sure you boil the water ahead of time and melt that cube in there. If you prefer, you can just buy the boxed one from the grocery store. We just always have these on hand, so it was easier for us to use that tonight. So I have that going in a little measuring cup. And we are on there, and we can add the other ingredients. So we won't need to use all of our crust today for the amount that's in here. So you can keep that to the side and you could make another meat pie a different day. You could use it for a regular pie, like a pumpkin pie or an apple pie. But another household favorite here with leftover crust is if you roll it out or squish it into a little dish that can go in the oven, and then you poke holes all through it. And then once the whole thing is covered in holes, you can use cinnamon sugar and cover that and then bake it in the oven. That is a family favorite in this house. And people will just munch on that. Yes, for little ones, it's really great because they can do the punching because all you use is a fork and you can't really make a mistake by sticking a fork in pie crust. Okay, our meat is just about browned. I'm just going to chop it so it's nice and fine. I don't want any big chunks in there. And then I'm going to add the other ingredients. Let's see, we just want those nice and small, nice and small. Okay. So, next up, we are going to add a 1/4 cup of the stock. So I have that right here, and we're going to pour that in. And I'm going to a little bit. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to add is some tomato paste. So we are just using a little can of tomato paste. For this, you need 1 tablespoon. All right. And then you're just going to mix that in there, and then you can also add a 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce. Okay. So I'm going to add the tomato paste. Perfect. And then we are going to add the Worcestershire sauce. So that's what we're going to use. And we'll just add that. Worcestershire sauce is not an ingredient I typically measure. Normally when I'm pouring it in to different things, I just pour it. I don't ever measure it. So there we go. So we're going to mix that around and make sure everything gets coated and mixed into the mixture. And then you are going to add a tablespoon of flour. And the flour will be what thickens your mixture. If you don't want to use flour, you can use cornstarch. If you don't want to use cornstarch, you can grate potatoes. So make sure you peel the skin off them, but you can grate potatoes, and I'm sure 1 potato. A small potato, you can just grate that and put it into your mixture. And that can act as your thickening. And that's a great way. So that is in the traditional tortilla. You don't use flour to thicken it. You just use the potato. And then it also acts as a nice, I think everyone likes potato in a pie. I think that's a traditional addition to that. Okay. So that's looking good. And I will just add a tablespoon. I don't want to use that tablespoon. That one's a bit messy. I use a tablespoon of flour. There we go. And then you can mix that in there. And then once it's all cooked together, you can just pop that into your pie tins. You can add salt and pepper to season it. So add that to taste. So taste it, and then you can add the salt and pepper to find out how much you need. Because there is Worcestershire sauce in there, you just want to kind of gauge how much you actually need to add. So let's see. I will taste a bit. I'm going to add pepper, but I don't know if I'm going to add salt. There we go. All right. So that is all together. I'm going to let this cook a little bit longer before I put in because my carrots aren't quite soft. So we are going to let that soften a little bit more. But I will show you what our tart tins look like so you know what you are going for. So here are what our shells look like. You can see the thickness of them just from looking there.
It's quite a flaky crust.
Yes, it's a really nice and flaky crust. It does not get a soggy bottom, which is a really nice quality in a pie crust. You are going to want to cook these at what temperature, Mom?
Oh, typically around 400. So you wouldn't start at lower than 400. I would say probably 400.
Okay, so you're going to cook them at 400. And for approximately how long? How long would you?
Well, the meat's
The
already
meat's already
cooked, so I'm
cooked.
thinking probably 20 minutes.
20 minutes would probably be how much you're going to cook them. If you are making this in pie format, it's a different story. You want to cook them for a different amount of time.
And I would reduce the temperature. I started at 4 or 425, and I reduced to 350 for an additional 20 minutes. So I would cook them probably at least 35 minutes.
Okay.
For a pie.
So for the pie, you're going to want to cook that for about 35 to 40 minutes. You're going to want to check it, and you're going to want to start the temperature between 400 and 425, but you will want to reduce the heat to 350 after the first 20 minutes.
After the first 10.
Oh, after the first 10 minutes. My mistake. I heard that wrong. Okay, so now you have the filling and you have the crust, and now you are going to be able to go make this yourself. If you have a different recipe and you want to share that with us, let us know. Shoot us a message. Chat us on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter. Tag us in whatever you make, and we would love to see that. Next week, we have our final baking program, and we are going to be making buttery shortbread cookies. So those ones are going to be perfect for either you to eat or for Santa, whoever needs them. No judgment. You may need them just to get through wrapping presents. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope to see you at the library soon, and if not, have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you soon. Have a good night.